Story 1. I had an experience that I will never forget. My sister, cousin, and I had almost encountered death. This was during the 1950s in a rural area. We never thought that we would face such a terror. I was just a young child. I attended a school which offered activities once in a while. The school bus was coming for us to go to the event. It was called a sock hop, which children liked to attend. Those who rode the school bus had to pay a dime that day. And to travel back home by the school bus, the fee was the same. It was going to be a fun-filled evening of movies for the younger children, and a party for the well-behaved teenagers. We shared our thoughts as the day unfolded without haste. We were glad that Guma allowed us to participate. While we waited in front of my Guma's house for a ride, we talked about the fun we were going to have that night. The three of us were excited and kept looking down the road. We wanted the school bus driver to see us waiting in front of our home. Suddenly, as the wind blew the dust off the ground in an eerie manner, we heard something coming, and it was supernatural. The sounds of horses pulling a wagon was heard, and it was close. We looked down the road each way, but no wagon approached. Then we heard a man say,
"Giddy up."
Yet we saw no wagon. Apparently, it was a ghost approaching, and my sister sensed danger.
Run! Run to the house! Something is coming! We can't see it, but horses is galloping!
We ran to the house to tell Guma of our spooky experience. We heard a wagon coming, but there was no appearance. It was a sound that couldn't be comprehended or explained. My Guma came out on the porch and began to pray. As the ghostly wagon drew nigh, and the dust darkened the sky, Guma said aloud that her house was protected by Jesus Christ. The evil rider passed Gama's house but remained unseen. Was it coming for us, or just one among the three? Not Patrice, not Bibi, and not me. He was coming for someone, yet he was discreet. The driver rode past our house because of Gama's prayers. Yet it stopped at a house down the road, and the occupants were unaware. The wagon and horses disappeared after reaching its destination. We don't know why it stopped at that habitation. Gama said that we were safe, and the spirit was gone away. We returned to the road to wait for the bus's arrival. We were glad that Gama knew what to do in a spiritual crisis. Bibi and I attended the movie because of our age. Patrice went to the party because she was teenaged. Afterwards, we rode back home on the school bus. We were glad that the giddy-up man wasn't waiting for us. Yet as an adult, I often sit and wonder in my mind, what happened that this phantom appeared as we waited for our ride? We never saw the entity and never heard it again near our home. Over the years, I often wonder if the giddy-up man still rides down that road.
When the spooky ghostly wagon driver was heard but not seen, Gama made us go to church on Sunday evenings. We walked the roads at night, jumping over sticks along the way, to avoid being bitten by a snake lying in wait. For Gama only turned on the flashlight every now and then. She did not want to use up the battery and we'd be in complete darkness. As usual, we would hear the moans and eerie sounds from the cemetery way down. Other noises emanated from the woods on each side. Something was present, and we heard it that night. The commotion became more intense as we journeyed to church. Someone was walking in the woods, following, making us nervous. We learned that it was Snook, a man that pretended to be a ghost. He would wear a white sheet, running from the woods and scaring folks who walked down the road in the dead of night. Darkness was everywhere, for there were no streetlights. Snook put on a sheet and waited for those who walked down the road. In the shadow of the night, his antics were calculated and cold. The first time Gama gave Snook a whooping for his tricks. He ran away saying,
"Okay, Mama, I will quit."
He left us alone, and down the road he went a-stepping. However, he later started again like he did not learn his lesson. Now we often passed Ms. Rosalie's house during the evening. It was getting dark, and the sun was no longer beaming. The temperature decreased a bit, and we thought of the old lady who once occupied the now empty house that was dilapidated and shady. Ms. Rosalie was an odd woman who had big eyes. The children in the area thought that they were too wide. Did she see a ghost or was spooked by something? No, she just looked like that. It was her image. I was scared to look at her because her gaze was eerie. Yet the kind lady waved and greeted little Olmi. She spoke to everyone for she was a kind old soul. Rosalie didn't like foolishness, the truth be told. Well, Rosalie played a significant role in this story. Snook would see an end to his reign of terror. Now, Snook was a young man who liked to play. Scaring people was his forte. He frightened residents at night while they walked to church. He never thought of how fear can cause people to get hurt. He laughed about reactions from the childish antics that he displayed. Frightening people by pretending to be a ghost, what a shame. Then one night something happened that Snook didn't see coming. His unamusing antics and gestures had lured something. He put on his gear as he neared Ms. Rosalie's place. Snook didn't realize that his life was going to change. His costume was a white sheet with holes for eyes. He was bold, laughing as he analyzed his tactics to scare people walking on the road. No one knew where Snook was hiding, so they had to beware. He came from different directions. He could be anywhere. My Gamma would always warn Snook to stop his antics, because one night something may happen and cause him to panic. Yet Snook continued to run out to the road to scare. Then he would chuckle at people's reaction, for he did not care. Well, one night, Snook went by Ms. Rosalie's spooky house. No one went near that place by day, but especially at night. Suddenly, he heard a noise, and he turned around to see Miss Rosalie running towards him, and she was angry. Snook ran down the road screaming,
Help, she's coming! She's coming!
Turns out, Snook saw an angry and ominous apparition. You see, Miss Rosalie was deceased, but her spirit lingered around. She chased Snook down the road away from her house. He ran and ran until he reached a familiar place. His friends let him in their house, and Snook told this tale. He was going to hide inside Rosalie's house that night, being that she was deceased and her daughter had moved out. He heard a noise behind him, and he turned to see the terrifying and angry spirit of Miss Rosalie. She said,
You like to scare people, but I got something for you. Every time that you scare people, I am going to scare you too. I will be in your dreams and walk around in your house. That will teach you about scaring people on the road at night.
I'll never do it again. I swear, I won't dare.
Miss Rosalie disappeared, but her presence was still there. Since then, Snook was never the same. No one could convince him to go anywhere at night again. This is what happened to a young man one evening. He saw a ghost and he went screaming.
This is a true story, however, names have been changed to protect and respect those involved. Patty May was a young woman who lived with her grandmother, Tuller. She was a good mother to her son, Henry. She did her best to give him the world. She helped her grandmother around the house, and she tended to her younger sister Eloise and cousin, Lola. She was well liked by the neighbors in their community, but there was one person who cared a lot about her. Mr. Eugene Harrell was a single man that lived across the street from Tuller's house. Every time that he saw Patty May, he made every effort to say something to her. He was an older man, but he really admired her. He asked her out, but she rejected him many times. He became obsessed with her, but Patty made every effort to avoid him. This went on for some time, and Eugene decided to try another way to show his affection to Patty May. Suddenly, one night, Patty May started experiencing something so petrifying. Something was coming in her room and holding her down. An entity was attacking her, and no one was able to help her. Although her sister and cousin slept in a bedroom near her, they were unable to hear her fight against this malevolent being. Patty May's room was dark, she was unable to move and had difficulty breathing. She awakened and was gasping for air. For several nights, this being would enter her room and tried to assault her. It would awaken her by climbing in bed with her and hold her down. Patty May said that the spirit was a strong man that held her down. The only manner in which she could get out of this awful and waking nightmare, she had to say the name of Jesus. It became difficult for her because this being, who she also perceived was a ghost, would cover her mouth and nose. She knew that she had to do something, or this thing would unalive her. As a result, Patty was very sleepy. She was drained of energy because of the ghost that visited her every night. This thing would stop for a while and then come back to her stronger than ever. Patty May didn't know what to do. Grandmama Toller noticed that Patty May was sleepy all of the time. She asked her why she wasn't sleeping well. She asked her if she was worried about something. That's when Patty told her grandmother that every night the ghost of a man would enter her room and try to have his way with her. Grandmama Toller became angry.
That's a foul and unclean spirit that's after you, my child, and I'm going to handle this. Oh, nasty thing. It's a man spirit that desires you. He wants you real bad. I know how to deal with him. He entered the wrong house and messed with my granddaughter. I'll get him. You try to get some rest.
Later that night, Patty May thought about what her grandmother said about the entity that visited her room. She felt safe knowing that her grandmother understood and was planning to help her get over this ordeal. She didn't know what her grandmother intended to do, but she trusted that she would do what was necessary to rid her of the nightly visitor whose goal was to disturb her. One night, when the house was dark, everyone was asleep except Grandmama Toller. Suddenly, she heard the sound of someone enter the front porch. The old wood plank on the front porch popped as something or someone stepped onto the covered entrance. Someone whom the grandmother feels was a heavy man was walking around trying to find a way to enter the house. Next, the floor creaked from the inside of the house and footsteps were heard. Grandma Toller knew that she had to do something, or this thing would start harassing her and the other children. She had to protect her granddaughter too. The grandmother got out of bed and started heading towards the sound of the footsteps. This spirit walked and one could actually hear the sound of his footfalls, which ended at Patty May's bedroom. The grandmother moved with precision as she grabbed an empty mason jar from the kitchen cabinet. She removed the lid of the jar, but she kept it in her grasp. Then the grandmother went to Patty May's room. She could see her granddaughter trying to fight something that she could not see. Then the grandmother did the strangest thing. She held up the jar and yelled,
Patty May. Patty May. Answer me, my child.
Grandmama, help me. It's here.
She watched as her grandmother quickly placed a lid on top of a jar. The jar went to shaking violently in the old woman's hands, yet Grandma Toller held the jar tightly. Then she told her granddaughter that the entity would no longer bother her. The grandmother took and placed the jar inside her room. The next day, while everyone was eating breakfast, Grandmama Toller told what happened to Patty May and what she did to eradicate that lust demon.
I couldn't see it, but I heard it. I grabbed a jar from the kitchen and followed it to Patty's room. When I went into her room, that spirit had her bound and she was struggling to get loose. I called out to her, she answered. She wanted to be free. I was able to trap that spirit in a mason jar. Now I must tell you all this. The person who was attacking you, Patty May, will want to come by the house to borrow something. Don't give it to him. Tell him that you don't have what he's looking for. He is trying to be released from the jar.
The girls heeded their grandmother's words. Later that morning, there was a knock on the door. Grandmama Tuller answered the door. It was the neighbor Eugene Harrell. My grandmother asked him what he wanted.
Good morning, Miss Tuller. I wanted to know if I could please borrow some sugar.
We ain't got no sugar.
Then she closed the door. Then the next day he wanted to borrow some coffee. The grandmother refused him again. For several days the neighbor came over to Grandmama Tuller's house and wanted to borrow something. It was apparent that he was the person who was harassing Patty May. He would astral project from his house to her room, and he came as a spirit. A part of his soul was sealed in a mason jar hidden on my Grandma Tuller's land. Eugene Harrell became sick and succumbed to his illness a few years later. He tried his best to be released from the bottle. He even went as far as asking Patty May and the girls if he could borrow something from them, and they refused him too. He had to deal with his actions for being an astral stalker and trying to have his way with Patty May. He felt that what he couldn't get from her naturally, under the cloak of darkness, he could enter her room and harass her as a spirit. In regard to what happened to that mason jar, something grew inside and it looked like a piece of meat. That was the last time that the girls saw that jar. Therefore, no one knew where Mother Tuller placed that mason jar. All that Patty May, Eloise, and Lola knew is that the jar was later buried on their grandmother's property with a piece of their neighbor's soul on the inside. However, exactly where the location of the jar, no one knows. Another incident occurred when a woman, a neighbor to Susie's father, had a daughter who was experiencing sleep paralysis. In the Black community, she was being harassed by an incubus or a living person desiring her. The vile spirit would attack the neighbor's daughter every night. One of Susie's relatives advised her father about what the neighbor needed to do. So Susie's father told the neighbor to put a sifter under her daughter's bed and not to remove it. The neighbor did as she was told, and the evil entity never bothered her child again. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Remember to be careful, because what you do, if it's creepy, it will be added to File 13.